Welcome to The Big Failure. I'm Tom Rowe, your host at Profit from the Pod, and these are the reasons why I failed at podcasting. The number one reason is because I thought I was going to fail. I never started one. It's going to be too hard. There are going to be too many obstacles. We'll go through some of the obstacles that I thought I was going to have. But the number one was, I'm going to fail. Why even start it? Because I'm doomed before I even start my podcast. One of the other reasons why I failed at podcasting was it's not very easy for me to talk at length about any subject because I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk. It's definitely out of my comfort zone. We'll figure out how I got around that obstacle as well. Another reason I failed as a podcaster was because I looked around at the successful podcasters and I found they don't look like me. They don't talk like me. They might not be as old as me. And that was enough for me to say, I'm a failure at podcasting. I'll talk to you about how I got around that one. Another reason I failed is because I didn't think, or I was worried about no one would be interested in what I had to say. Well, that might be the case. If there's haters out there, they could probably just leave some comments. Hey, let me cut in right here, right in the middle of my own podcast for a little bit of advertising or maybe a little bit of asking. I need your help. I do. Would you please help me? I'm trying to get my subscriber count up to 1,000, and every view, every subscriber helps me. Could you please maybe just subscribe? I really appreciate it. Thank you. Now back to the guy who is going to be a biggest failure at a podcast. But what I do have is a realistic expectation because I've done my research. That's the second one, doing research. I'm not afraid of doing research. I have a realistic expectation when it comes to podcasting. I don't think I'm going to get 1,000 viewers in 25 or 50 videos. I've done enough research that my videos are going to be terrible, probably the first 25. And then they're going to be just okay after that. But the one thing that a lot of these successful podcasters say, Mr. Beast, watched a video interview with him today. He said, my first 100 videos probably were terrible. I think he started when he was 14. He said, but what you really have to do is stop thinking about it and just put out videos. Try to make them the best you can. And the next one, make better than the last one. You learn something from each one. I learned something from my first 3. I never had a thumbnail on my first 2. I found out that it was important to do that. And then I listened to Mr. Beast again. He said, if you don't have a good thumbnail that is going to hook people to watch, why would they? Why would they watch if you didn't have a good hook? There's millions of podcasts out there. There's millions of YouTube content creators that use thumbnails. And if you don't use the thumbnail, why is anybody going to pick you over something that looks better? Come on, you can't judge a book by its cover, right? But when the cover's nice and colorful, you probably will look at that book before you look at one that was just, dull black and white. Because like when I was a kid, I used to like the pictures. I used to look at the front of the book, the cover of the book, and hey, that looked pretty good. Then I used to open it up and see if there was pictures in it or photos, and I'm going to read that one because I didn't like to read. Another one person that I listened to when I was thinking about making a podcast was Sean Cannell from Think Media. He stole a quote. I'm going to steal it from him. Good artists copy, great artists steal. So good artists copy other artists and great artists steal from other artists. I am not stupid enough that I am not going to look for the easy way out. I'm going to find someone who did it successful before me, and I'm going to steal what they did for their success. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to follow a blueprint because I'm going to go into it later, how lazy people often look for the easiest route and why something that is come to the forefront in the last year is helping people that are lazy and procrastinators be successful. I'm going to just look at somebody else's way that they did it, and I'm going to try to copy it and steal it, the best parts, and make them my own, which, that's flattering for somebody if you take their work. I'm not actually taking their work. I'm just taking their policies or procedures and making them my own. I'm also not afraid to ask for help. And that's a skill that I learned when I first came out of college. I worked for a long distance telephone company selling long distance back when long distance was actually a separate part of your phone bill. And there was only probably 4 or 5 companies that offered that. And I worked for the second one that actually broke up in a monopoly against AT&T. I was a telemarketer. You know, the people that call you up and you hang up on them when you realize that it's just a spam phone call or something. I would make 400 calls in a day, probably reach about maybe 200 people. Of those 200 people, 100 people would probably just hang up on me within the first 10 seconds. I learned that this was going to be hard and that I needed to get in there and talk to more people before they hung up on me. So instead of trying to sell them something, I asked them for help, especially if it was the gatekeeper. I said, hey, listen, I need your help. I'm calling from such and such, and I don't know who I would need to speak with or how I'd go about trying to save you some money on your long distance. Be surprised about how many people would be willing to help you with their defenses down because you asked for help rather than you going right in and asking for money. Just cemented the idea that I am not afraid of asking people for help, finding people who have done it before me, or just somebody who is a little bit more creative than I am and uses a different approach for their content when they create on social media. Another reason why I thought I was going to fail, like I said before, was no one really looks like me. That's my niche. Nobody really looks like me. Nobody talks like me. Nobody is me. I'm my own person. I'm going to be different. Maybe somebody will find that interesting. Another reason why I thought I was going to fail was because I don't like to be the most important person in the room. I don't like to be the one talking. I had a career worth of having to be the person that stood up in front of the sales team. I had to stand up in front of when I managed a call center. I stood up in front of a classroom of 9, 10, and 11-year-olds, and they're harsh because their filter does not work and they just tell you whatever is on their mind. I did it because I had to do it and I thought I did it okay. At least most of the people said I did an okay job, but never in my comfort zone. I had to work around that all my life about being an introvert. And the best way that I found about working around having to be the center of attention or thinking that you're the most important person in the room, which I never want to be. I probably never was, even when I'm in there alone, not the most important person in the room. But I found out that if I can get people to do the talking rather than me, it was easier for me and I could be less anxious about talking with people in a room. Most people, if you ask the right questions, would like to talk about themselves. I don't like to talk about myself. I don't like to talk about my accolades. I just rather talk about something that I'm interested in. That's my other niche. A lot of people do it. They do interviews. They let other people talk. As long as you present good questions, maybe you'll get some answers. I am going to interview people that have either become an entrepreneur or have something to share, interesting topics. I really like to see and talk to people who have overcome adversity. I like to talk with people who had a rough time and then worked so hard they worked themselves out of a situation. I have a great amount of admiration for people that have obstacles in their way and have to work around those obstacles to be successful. And they might be physical, they might be mental, they might be environmental, but we never know what someone is going through. And for them to get out and talk about how they became successful with overcoming obstacles is great for people who are on the fence about doing something or have not enough motivation to take the next step. And that is the type of podcast that I think will be my niche. I think it will be people who overcome adversity and rise above all of the obstacles and succeed. Not to say that those obstacles still aren't there. They may be there, but they just worked their way around it. And I'm sure a lot of you listening to this or watching this podcast can think about a time where you may not have thought you would be able to do something, but you put your mind to it and you overcame and you jumped over those obstacles and you made it happen. Remember how good you felt? You felt very good and you felt a lot better doing it yourself. Another reason why I thought I was going to fail, I didn't think I was going to know the technology because I saw all these great creative content creators making great thumbnails and having great guests on and having special effects. Well, I'll tell you what helped me. I've often been a procrastinator, and when you are a procrastinator, you're also branded lazy. And that's a pretty terrible thing to have to listen to most of your life when you're 8, 9, and 10, because you're a procrastinator, because you just don't understand something and you put it off and put it off because you know you're not going to be able to do it. And then when someone actually calls you out, maybe when you're in 6th grade, the teacher that you really respect yells across the room to you so that all of your 20, 25 other friends can hear. And she says, "Tommy, did you finish that assignment yet?" And she looks over, and of course, Tommy hasn't finished it yet. She goes, "You know what you are? You're a procrastinator, just lazy." And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, I didn't know what procrastinator meant. Oh, but she went deeper. She says, "Do you know what a procrastinator is? It's someone that doesn't finish things, just like you." Ouch. Could you imagine somebody saying that to a 10 or 11-year-old child? Well, guess what, Donna? I learned to overcome. And now there's this thing called AI that removes a lot of stumbling blocks in front of me, and I don't get frustrated as much because I always have something to fall back on. I love AI. AI was made for lazy and procrastination. It was. It takes all of the stumbling blocks out of the way, just as long as you know what to ask it. Those speed bumps preventing you from doing something with technology, they're a lot lower now. There's still going to be learning curves. You just have to know what to ask AI. I made my logo on AI. I asked AI what would be viral TikTok videos. I asked AI to organize questions to ask a certain person on an interview. AI solves a lot of problems. And for anybody that might be on the ADHD spectrum who gets sidetracked because they know they're not going to be able to finish that task, AI makes it a lot easier to do tasks. You realize that for me personally, AI is a big help for me. It allows my creativity to go to the next level, my organization to go to the next level. Heck, I wasn't even organized, and now I can really ask AI to make me a list of steps that I need to do. And I could even go further and say, could you give me sub lists of what I need to do to get to each goal? I've given you a lot of reasons why I should have not started a podcast and why I would have failed starting a podcast. I'm really glad that I didn't listen to myself, that I thought, I am going to do this, because right now I am on my 4th podcast. 90% of all podcasts do not make it past the 2nd or 3rd episode. I'm on my 4th, so that means I'm in the top 10%. Probably, only about 20 or 30 other million people are in that top 10%. I want to get to 1,000 subscribers so that I can go live. I have to do a lot of takes because I get tongue-tied, lose my train of thought. If I go live, I think that's going to force me to really keep an even keel of my speech and my thoughts, and always thinking a little bit ahead so I know what to do when the next pause comes, so that there won't be a pause. As always, I thank you for watching. If I haven't asked you already, can you please subscribe and maybe like my video? Thank you. Take care. And like my mother always used to say, it's nice to be important. It's more important to be nice.